Welcome to episode 2 of Fan Favorites, the series where I watch and talk about my viewers' favorite movies. We got 931 submissions now. That is a lot. Chances are I'll never get to yours unless I do 931 episodes. Generate number between 1 and 931. Is it just going to do it right when I do Google? I don't know how this works. And go. Oh, I got the AI overview. AI is taking over fan favorites. Random number between 1 and 931 is 427. I don't know exactly what I'm hoping for when I refresh these. You know, I tried to go in with a blank slate. Like last time I didn't expect to see Megamind. I saw Megamind. And this time, I don't know. Maybe it's just a little variety. It was nice last time. Each movie was a little different. Maybe 4 of like the same director, or 3 of the same trilogy might be a bit repetitive. But here we go. I'm going to type in 427. As always, I ask them anything they want to add. Huge fan of yours. These movies are foundational to my sense of creativity and have influenced my music and other projects for years. Here we go. Copy, paste, and open my eyes. Oh, okay. We got some good ones here. And by good ones, I mean ones I don't know, which is exciting. This is Bessie. Bessie is a shitty musician with debatable taste. Well, with this episode, we're going to debate this taste. Hackers, 90s movie. I think it kind of has a cheesy reputation. Maybe it's like fun in a corny way. I don't know. Or maybe it'll just surprise me by being genuinely great. And then there's Night on the Galactic Railroad. Haven't heard of this. It looks like an animated movie. From the 80s, super curious. I never read synopsises. Don't even show me that crap. They spoil everything. They always tell me the whole movie. All right, up next, But I'm a Cheerleader. I remember the Criterion Channel had this one at one point. I think people really like this one by Jamie Babbitt. And last but not least, Red Line, some sort of animated movie from 2009. All right, so let's see what Bessie says about each of these movies. Fast and Furious, but with computers. I rewatch this delight of a film every couple months and love it more each time, right down to the bad ADR, amazing soundtrack, and extremely frantic editing. If I ever make a movie, this will be one of the large inspirations. Super cool. I get inspired by the stuff I love too, and I just work it into my stuff. Cat, Jesus died for your sins. I'll keep that in mind when I'm watching this movie. Super quotable film that really helped me to relate to camp culture after coming out of the closet. Has tons of the same energy as Clerks. That's awesome. Cowboy Bebop meets Wacky Races was one of my favorite soundtracks to a film. Go in with zero expectations or knowledge if you can and just embrace every minute of it. That's how I try to go into every movie, and I will do it with Red Line. And yeah, this is an exciting layout. Nothing too long. I'm awaiting the day that somebody has Satan Tango or whatever, that 9-hour movie. Somebody's got Berlin Alexanderplatz. They're throwing 15 hours at me. And I gotta do it. If it happens, I gotta do it. But anyways, here we go. Bessie, thank you for the recommendations. This is gonna be an interesting one. It looks like a good variety. I can't wait. I am glad that hackers exist, and I might even go as far to say hackers needs to exist in order for us to have this time capsule of what was apparently cool in the 90s. And cool it is. This movie is trying so hard to be cool, and I have such a hard time deciding if it is still cool or if it's just cheesy, because this movie is so cheesy. Me and my friend Nick were watching this, and we were dying laughing start to finish just because it's so goofy. You know, the nicknames they give each other, the Freak, Acid Burn, Zero Cool, these hacker names. Nick and I were joking, like, what are our names? Nick said his name is Whiplash, and I said my name is the Driver, you know, like a play on the getaway driver, but also like a driver. You get it. But comment below your hacker names. But anyways, it is so cheesy, but at the same time, you are sort of enthralled by the story. The pacing is immaculate. This movie just goes, and it keeps you on board the whole time. And some of the production design is really cool, like the bad guy offices with all those computer towers and server towers is so colorful and fun, and all the CG kind of is timeless because it's trying to be like technology in a way that doesn't really date itself the same way as if they were trying to do something photorealistic. You're looking at numbers in a machine, and it kind of works. You know, some of the hacking sequences are so lame. It's just like low opacity shots of them spinning with a keyboard over a bunch of nonsense numbers. But the music is fun, and it doesn't lose you in those moments. You're just kind of laughing at it until it gets back to something tangible, you know? But I really enjoy this. Penn Jillette is in it for some reason in such a minor role, and he got credited first at the ending. I was like, what? Was this like a big draw for the movie? Like they put him in the trailer? I don't know. But it is so fun. Angelina Jolie's in it. I don't know. This might be one of her first big roles. And she's fun in it. It's very different than the more serious Angelina we see later on. Is a little goofier and cornier. And yeah, everyone's great. Dade, the main character's name was cracking me up the whole movie. Dade, D-A-D-E. Whoever thought of that? I think sometimes you just gotta give your character a normal name. You could try too hard to make sure they have a name that no one's had before in a movie. But you know, it's okay to call your character Tyler. It's okay to call your character Zach, you know? They don't need to be Dade, especially if he's also Zero Cool and Crash Overdrive or whatever. He's got a lot of names. But it's just a very fun movie. The villain, who goes by the Plague, is really goofy and fun. And ultimately, it's like a fun stick-it-to-the-man story of these underdogs going up against these corporations. That's sort of a timeless story at this point, especially in this day and age where mega corporations are everywhere and they do feel more and more like overlords every day. It's kind of fun to get lost in a story about sticking it to those bastards, those greedy bastards. And it was a good time. I think Hackers gets a 4 out of 5 for me. It's just like so rock solid, it's hard to fault. And I do think it's still cool. It's lame as hell, but it's like so much cooler than just something being grounded and serious like maybe a modern version of this might be, you know, trying to sell you on the world and the characters. It's almost timelessly cool in that it was so unashamedly trying to be cool for its time. You know, it has aged really well in good and bad ways. And for that reason, Hackers is worth a watch. Check out Hackers. I had never heard of Night on the Galactic Railroad, but admittedly my knowledge of anime is pretty slim. I've seen a lot of Studio Ghibli. I've seen Paprika, Akira, Ghost in the Shell, you know, the heavy hitter classics you gotta watch, but I haven't really broadened my horizons. So this was an interesting watch for me. It's based on a famous Japanese children's book, and it definitely feels like that. It feels like you're sort of just flipping the pages of a children's book, like next stop on the train, what pretty picture is next? And I enjoyed that element, but it led to the movie feeling a little repetitive. I'll get to that. But what I liked about this movie is the ways it reminded me of like the best Studio Ghibli movies that I love, like Spirited Away or Boy and the Heron. It felt very much similar plot-wise. A kid lost in their life gets lost in this fantastical realm, ultimately returning to their life, forever changed. Classic hero's journey stuff. But I definitely felt like Miyazaki could have pulled a lot of inspiration from this movie in that way. And as far as this movie goes, I love the opening. There's like 30 minutes at the start that are very patient. We just see this main character go through their life. They get bullied. They don't fit in. They try to help their mom. And I love when anime sort of really is patient and treats the mundane with such heft. You know, it gives so much weight to the mundane to so lovingly animate like a kid walking into a convenience store and paying on the counter, or a kid going to get milk for their mom, giving that the same weight as the fantastical world. You know, I love when Miyazaki gets lost in the mundane and puts so much artistry into just like normal everyday life. I think that's such a beautiful thing to highlight with animation, and you really don't see it in American animation as much. American animation is more about these big dramatic moments and fast pacing. So it's nice to see an animated movie be so patient, especially considering the amount of effort that would take. It's like you want to sit down and spend the next couple months on the kid going to their job sequence, like that doesn't sound very fun. I think American animation would skip it in favor of something more exciting for kids, but anime typically usually relishes in those mundane moments, and I like that a lot. But once this movie hit that fantastical turn, the titular train ride, the Galactic Railroad, it started to become a little repetitive, like I said. It just felt like these two kids on this train ride, just like stop after stop. Ooh, they see a pretty thing out the window. It gets explained by another passenger. Next thing, pretty thing out the window, gets explained. Next thing, they scarcely ever get off of the train. And as the ride goes on, the movie gets more and more Christian imagery, which actually surprised me. I wasn't expecting this to have so much Christian text in it. There's big crosses. They talk about giving your life to God. There's heaven in this movie. And I wouldn't say it's like verging on like propaganda. I think it's just more ethereal than that. It's sort of just the beautiful choir, the gospel that guides us through this. It didn't feel preachy. It just was interesting to see that imagery in like a Japanese kids movie. But nonetheless, the movie comes around to this climax. I won't spoil it, but the climax is a little like hampered by this dinky ass music. I don't know why they did it. The whole movie has this beautiful choir music, and suddenly the climax gets this dinky ass doink 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 doink. Well, something emotional's happening. I'm like, who scored this scene? Did they bring in the guest nephew of the composer or something? I don't know. It felt a little goofy. Sort of definitely shot it in the foot for me a little. But there was one sequence involving the Titanic that felt very transcendental filmmaking. Like, what's his face talks about. I'm blanking on his name. He did First Reformed, Paul Schrader. It felt very transcendental, like God washing over the movie. Just like this beautiful meditative scene. And that Titanic sequence was the highlight of the movie for me, for sure. But nonetheless, this is beautifully animated. I love like 80s animation, how it has that thicker grain. It's a little more dated looking. It's not quite as refined and detailed as like anime winds up getting in the 90s and then even more so in the 2000s. It's a little, rougher around the edges, a little more hand-drawn, and that feels really cool to see, especially with like 30 years of hindsight. It's really special to see these harsher, like animations, and it's still beautiful, but just it's not as refined as we might be used to nowadays. And I'm glad I watched this movie. I think that repetitive nature and kind of losing myself in the symbology of it kind of weighed it down a little, but ultimately, I think this is a great movie, and if you love anime, I'm sure this is a classic that you gotta watch. So check it out. I saw the movie But I'm a Cheerleader a number of months ago on the Criterion channel, and I wanted to watch it. I missed my chance, and I'm so glad to watch it now, because this is such a delightful, warm, colorful 90s rom-com. I've lamented many times about how we've lost the rom-com. At least the rom-com that is so willfully goofy, willfully magical, like getting lost in love. All of the rom-coms nowadays are so serious. They're drenched in, love is an illusion and marriages end in divorce. They have to hammer all this home before the characters fall in love. But this one, I wouldn't call it fully sweet, because it has a lot to say about homophobia. It's a big send-up parody of conservative homophobia, but ultimately it does come around to being a very light on its feet, heartwarming rom-com that is about being yourself and falling in love with who you want to fall in love with. Everyone's prejudices be damned. And that's just a positive message that's going to be timeless forever. It stars Natasha Lyonne, who I thought was maybe 35 these days. Turns out she's been around since the 90s. What did I know? She's aging gracefully, and to put it lightly. But anyways, she goes to a gay conversion camp because her parents find out she's a lesbian, and the movie's just full of bits and gags. It's full of, gay people failing to do straight stuff because they're gay, and gay people doing gay stuff instead of straight stuff when they should be doing straight stuff. You know, that's about 100 of the bits could be summed up that way. But nonetheless, it doesn't get repetitive. I think it just works. It's just like I said, such a warm, light on its feet movie that has a real beating heart, hits some serious emotions, but you'd have to have a pretty cold heart to come away from this movie not feeling at least somewhat believing in love more, feeling like people should be themselves. And I think that's a positive thing for a movie to do. This movie was just a delightful watch, very brief. I love a good short movie that gets in and out. I think this is less than 90 minutes, so check it out. Red Line is yet another super popular anime movie I somehow never heard of, and let me tell you, this is a beast of a movie. Apparently it took 7 years to animate, and every second of screen time that shows. This animation is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's so detailed and so fluid and also so contrasty. It's such a unique look I hadn't seen before. And on top of that, it does so much cool stuff with composition and cinematography. When the cars are going so fast they warp space-time, and it creates this fisheye effect with the camera that's so extreme I can't even conceptualize hand drawing that, and somehow they did it. It's mind-blowing. And let me tell you, this movie does not have the most complex story. It's a bunch of sort of archetypical characters and over-the-top characters going at it in this giant galactic space race on Robo World. It just is so goofy, but its world is just so realized from the get-go. Every detail of this world makes sense. It feels lived in. You see all these alien species, all these weird rules, this weird technology, and you just sort of accept it because it's crazy from the get-go, and it's just sort of a visual feast that you take in. And with that said, I did get lost in the visual feast sometimes. I think especially once they had the giant space baby fighting the giant space demon. It didn't last very long, but it just sort of fell into that anime cliche body horror, like super fluid, gory, whatever you call that, like Akira popularized. It definitely kind of got lost in that for a few minutes. But ultimately the racing is so fun. It's hard to keep track of, especially looking up and down to the subtitles. Never have I felt subtitles be a detriment to a movie, and I avoid dubs at all costs. But here I was sort of kicking myself for doing the subtitles because I'd look up and look down and miss 5 shots because it's just so breakneck pace and so fast. And this movie is horny as hell. But I think if you put in this much effort, maybe you're allowed to be a little horny. Maybe that's a good rule of thumb. If you put in the effort, you could have some booby shots and stuff like that. But this was a fun movie. It doesn't leave an emotional impact. The ending is so goofy and abrupt and over the top. But it definitely was such a ride. It's something I admire so much for the sheer audacity of it. It's one of those movies I was talking about with Birdman. That's just such a singular film. Nothing moves and breathes and is rhythmically like this movie. It's sort of one of a kind. And for that, I have to give it high regards. This is a 4 out of 5 for me. I'm so inconsistent with giving these damn ratings. I don't think I did it for the last 2. But 4 out of 5 for Red Line. Such a fun movie. One thing people recommended on the first episode is they wanted me to choose the movies at the end of each episode so then they could keep up and watch along like a movie club. And while I think that makes a lot of sense, I also think structurally the episodes would be a lot less compelling if they just start with me rambling about the movies. Sort of opening with me choosing the movies is a much more interesting start to these videos. So for the time being, I'm going to keep it this way. But feel free to just watch the start and then a week later watch the video. If you want to treat it like a movie club that way, maybe I'll eventually change it. But Bessie, thank you so much for submitting yours. I had a delightful time. I'm going to give the score quickly. I think Hackers is a 4 out of 5, an amazing time capsule of the 90s. Night on the Galactic Railroad, 3 out of 5. It was beautifully animated, just didn't resonate as deeply with me as something like Spirited Away or The Boy and the Heron did many years later. And then we got But I'm a Cheerleader, 4 out of 5, right up my alley. 90s rom-com, nostalgic, can't go wrong. And then we got Redline, 4 out of 5, one-of-a-kind movie. Didn't impact me that much emotionally, but just one-of-a-kind visually and just unlike anything I've ever seen. So you add that all up, bleep, bloop, bloop, bleep, 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 and you get 15 out of 20 again, which is an amazing synchronous thing with my taste. You know, that just means I love these movies. You know, I've seen like ones I love even more from each subcategory, like animes that I love even more and rom-coms I love even more. But nonetheless, 15 out of 20 is great. These were great submissions. I'm glad I haven't disliked any of the movies people submitted so far. That day will inevitably come, and I hope I'm not too harsh when that day does come. I don't want to poo-poo anyone's movies, as I keep saying. And yeah, lastly, some recommendations. It's kind of hard, you know, like you clearly probably know anime much better than me, but maybe like It's Such a Beautiful Day would be in line with Redline as far as just an animated movie that beats to its own drum. Don Hertzfeldt, I got to see more of his stuff too, but It's Such a Beautiful Day is one of my favorite animated movies. Totally different than Redline, much more existential, but nonetheless, that movie is with me forever, and if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it. And Night on the Galactic Railroad, you know, those Studio Ghibli movies are sort of obvious to suggest, but yeah, like Studio Ghibli are the ones I've seen that do it really well. And then But I'm a Cheerleader. I have so many 90s rom-coms I've seen, but none spring to mind immediately. You know, what did I watch in the last couple of years? I watched Just Like Heaven. That's like an early 2000s rom-com. Mark Ruffalo, I think Reese Witherspoon is a ghost. That's a funny movie, a sweet movie. Can't Hardly Wait. You know, maybe these are a little less LGBT focused than But I'm a Cheerleader. But just like fun 90s, warm, romantic 90s, 2000s rom-coms. Right up my alley. I'll throw a couple more on the screen. I'll look at my letterbox and actually remember what I like. I should have looked before this. And lastly, Hackers. Hackers is a hard one to recommend. You know, part of me wants to recommend something horrible like Lawnmower Man 2, which is like a really bad version of Hackers. But that's like a so bad it's good movie that's pretty bad. And I also haven't seen that in like 15 years. The other part of me is like obviously The Matrix. The Matrix feels like Hackers if it had 5 more years of hindsight to understand what might actually be cool. Even though The Matrix is often corny as hell too, it is way less overtly corny than Hackers. It feels like Hackers was swept up in those 90-isms, and as Matrix was leaving the 90s, it had a bit more of a refined look at what was cool in the 90s. But maybe that makes The Matrix a little less charming to me, that Hackers is so overtly corny that I like it. I like it a lot. And yeah. And those are my recommendations. I'll try to be a little more refined with my recommendations in future episodes to really sit and think about it, because this was just me free balling it. But thank you so much, Bessie, for submitting. Submit in the description below your Letterboxd account, and if I choose you, I'll watch your favorites. Thanks so much for watching. I love movies. I love you guys. Bye-bye.